Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and I just remembered that I had forgotten to do my vlog on the Wolverine, which is not going to be easy because I am losing my voice, and I had just eaten Mexican food, so I feel incredibly sluggish. So hopefully I could provide a somewhat informative and entertaining video for you. I even wrote notes because I have a lot to say, yet very little to say. Okay, so for the most part, the reception towards the Wolverine has been positive. Everybody pretty much agrees that it is an improvement over the previous Wolverine-based film, X-Men Origins Wolverine, which, like that movie or not, there's no denying that at least that had the better sequel title. Seriously, this is the Wolverine is about as lazy as Fast and Furious and The Final Destination. Okay, maybe The Final Destination is the worst one of those three, but still, the Wolverine's pretty weak. But unfortunately, whereas I was probably the only person who actually enjoyed X-Men Origins Wolverine, I am probably the only person who did not enjoy the Wolverine. It's difficult to explain why, because I do agree that Origins is technically inferior to this one. I think Origins was more what I wanted out of a Wolverine movie. It was more of an action movie, whereas this one is more of a romance. But to be fair, I was never particularly interested in this project. I thought the premise seemed silly. The guy who directed this, he did, I believe, Identity and Night and Day. I liked Identity, but I did not like Night and Day, so I was pretty indifferent to his involvement. And also, I thought the trailers looked incredibly stupid. Sorry, I had to edit. The phone was ringing. You see, though, the trailer, it looked like it was too silly to take seriously, and yet at the same time it was taking itself too seriously. Alright, Wolverine's going to Japan, that's the premise. Of course he's going to, they're going to exploit the Japanese locations, but not only is he going to be fighting Yakuza, he's also going to be fighting ninja, samurai, robots, robot samurai. It's just, I don't know, when I say that out loud, it just sounds so goofy. It's a very stereotypical view of Japan, and it's even worse, I think, in the movie, because every Japanese person talks about honor, dishonor, and Japanese traditions, and they're more or less playing Japanese types or archetypes. So I don't want to call it racist, but it definitely is stereotyping Japan. It's not Japan, it's an American's vision of what Japan must be like. Sort of like I imagine in Japan, they probably imagine us as all cowboys and shit like that. But so I just thought that looked very goofy, and yet unfortunately the trailer had no idea it was coming across this way. It instead was opting to be bleak and depressing, and that just made it worse for me, because this movie clearly has no idea how silly it really is. And so that's really why I was not all that excited to watch the Wolverine. And unfortunately, this problem was definitely an issue throughout the entire film for me. Whenever it was trying to be too serious, using its Japanese elements, I just would start cracking up. So that's not a good thing. But at the same time, I can't say the Wolverine is a bad movie at all. It does very little wrong in an objective sense, whereas Origins definitely had more explicit bad moments where the special effects failed or the writing became incredibly stupid. This movie, I thought the special effects were better. I thought the writing was overall better, but at the same time, I think Origins had a more engaging story. The problem I had with this plot is, for one, I saw the final twist coming, well, from the trailers, honestly. I figured out who was going to turn out to be the main villain just from the frickin' previews. Not a good sign. And it became even more obvious as I was watching the movie, so all that build-up really meant nothing to me. But also, throughout the entire movie, it's Wolverine and Mariko. They're trying to solve this mystery. What is going on? Why is everything happening? But once again, I knew where it was going the entire time. And I have not read the comic either. I did not look on Wikipedia to see what happens in the comic. Like, I was not interested in this project enough to do so. But I don't even know if it was faithful to the original story. But, so, okay, that's fine. But what is the majority of the screen time dedicated to? Well, a lot of it is their relationship. The problem with this love story is, besides the fact that Wolverine and Mariko are horrendously developed, their relationship can be summed up as he sees her, he falls in love with her, she sees him, she falls in love with him, even though she's not as willing to admit it at first. Very Twilight-ish, never a good sign. At least the actors had some chemistry, but it was just a very bland, underdeveloped romance, as most of these movies tend to do. And it's also very soap operatic. She has this very complicated love life for some reason. She's engaged to a politician that was arranged by her father, though, so it's not really her fault. And she was once engaged to somebody else who she apparently used to have feelings for, but no longer does, and is now in love with Wolverine. I didn't understand why they had to include all of this convoluted nonsense. To me, it wasn't necessary. Where was I? Oh yeah, the plot though. The main issue I had with the plot, besides the fact that I saw the twist coming, is that there isn't enough of a villainous presence. You see, every time Wolverine and Mariko would interact with a villain, it would just be generic Yakuza thugs. That's it. At least Origins had Sabretooth and the Asian gunslinger dude. They were threats I could take seriously because they were also mutants and they were also very, very skilled. Here, just generic Yakuza guys, it's just not the same. It doesn't really come until the end where the major threats start becoming known. So yeah, that to me just diminished any feeling of suspense. Even though, yeah, they did a good job by making, they don't take away Wolverine's healing powers. It's just not as effective as it was before. He could still take bullets better than he could in X-Men 2 for some reason, but that wasn't enough to really make me invested into what was going on. So that was not a good thing. Also, there were a lot of things I did not understand, like why certain characters did certain things. It seemed like they explained a lot of that during the final act, but because the final act is very action-oriented, they dropped that exposition on us really quickly, so I had difficulty processing it, or maybe they didn't say anything and they were just leaving it, it was left on the editing room floor, or we could have figured it out on our own, and I'm just stupid, I don't know. But yeah, so the plot I took issues with. I will say that it has a better grasp of pacing than Origins did. Origins... you see, when I liked Origins the first time around, I was just really impressed with the action sequences. So even though I noticed the bad writing in areas and that kind of stuff, I enjoyed it for that reason. But when it came to my second viewing of it, I noticed that it was very awkwardly paced. It would speed up, then slow down, and speed up and slow down. And it made the entire experience a little bit more exhausting than exciting. And even though I said that I liked the film, I think I gave it a 3-star rating when I first saw it, but I'd probably say 2.5-star rating now at best. But whereas the Wolverine is never as fast-paced, it's never as exciting, but I'm just talking in parts. I'm not contradicting what I just said. It's more leisurely paced, but at least it moved about as quickly as it wanted to move, so I never became exhausted or impatient, so that's a good thing anyway. The special effects are better this time around, but also I think Origins had the visuals in that film were more large scale, so they were more memorable. Here I thought they were fine. There's less bad moments once again, no glaring fake CGI claws that caused everybody to groan about Origins, but otherwise there's nothing that really stood out in terms of its visuals or action sequences. The choreography was fine. I just thought Origins had better fight choreography. Geez, I'm really kind of stumped here. This isn't an easy movie to talk about on my own. I was disappointed in the final battle between Wolverine and the Silver Samurai, which is the giant samurai robot. I thought the robot looked awesome. I thought it was so well designed, and it looked really good. I kept thinking this is what Pacific Rim should have had. This type of design really stands out. But unfortunately, when the fight between that and Wolverine begins, it's just very one-sided and not particularly interesting to watch. At least like Origins had both Wolverine and Sabretooth taking on Deadpool, and that sort of evened the odds. But this one, I just didn't think the final battle was all that interesting. I think that's really all I've got. The character arcs have gotten kind of tired. Wolverine keeps going through the same shit each time. It's just for different reasons. Originally he was having nightmares because he had no memory of his past and he was getting fragments of that back. Now he's just having nightmares about Jean, so he spends the movie moping around. I hate that kind of shit. And you get the impression that his relationship with Mariko is going to bring him out of this, rut. But unfortunately, I just didn't get that sense. His development went from A to B without anything in between. So I didn't like that. Mariko is even worse. The film actually asked the question of whether she is a strong person or a weak person. But the truth is, I don't know. She's strong if the plot calls for her to be strong, and she's weak if the plot calls for her to be weak. I guess you could argue that she begins as weak, but she soon finds her strength and becomes strong. But once again, A to B without anything in between. She just suddenly becomes a badass out of nowhere. But it's glaring because she's introduced, fairly early on to have martial arts abilities. So, okay, and you see during the first kidnapping attempt, she is kind of defending herself. But later on, when she gets captured by the Yakuza, she's not doing anything. They grab her, they throw her in the car. She's not really struggling much at all, except she's yelling for Wolverine to save her. Why is that? Because if she did defend herself, and she'd likely be able to hold off long enough for him to get there to save her. I did not like that, but of course, once again, at the end, she suddenly becomes awesome and badass and is throwing knives and kicking all sorts of ass. But to me, once again, that's just kind of sloppy character development. At least X-Men Origins had characters with distinct personalities, and I thought the writing was fairly consistent when it came to the characters. But here, the characters just didn't really capture my interest. They're playing archetypes with very little in terms of personality, although the actors often do make up for it. So you have, like Mariko's father, just a very one-dimensional villain, but he's being played by Hiroyuki Sanada, who is freaking awesome as always. So that sort of made up for it. And I thought the girl who played Mariko, I've never seen her before, but I thought she was pretty spectacular too. She gave that character more of a personality anyway, and I thought, she was pretty attractive, but also showed some legit acting abilities. But honestly, I really wish I could talk more about my issues, because the movie just did not impress me at all. It went through the motions for me. I never really was all that amazed by any of its action sequences or its plot development or its characters. It was just all very average. And even X-Men 3, X-Men 3 also I think has more distinct flaws than this one, and I was really frustrated by how it crammed in all these what could have been really cool stories into one generic mess. At least it had some moments that really stood out to me in terms of its action scenes. I really liked the fight between Wolverine and Juggernaut, and some of the ending action scenes were really cool. I still remember those, and I haven't even seen X-Men 3 since before X-Men Origins came out. I think I saw that actually once when it first came out in theaters. Whereas Origins, I saw last time when it first came out on DVD, and even Origins had more moments that stood out in terms of its action, and I thought that movie just had better suspense, even though it once again had a lot more flaws to it. This one, very little bad stands out, very little good stands out. It's just, I'm not even going to remember it in a week from now. And I believe I said earlier that I forgot to do this vlog. Usually I would do it Monday or over the weekend, but I forgot just because I believe this movie is just that forgettable. But of course, Everybody else seems to like it, so you probably will too. I'm just stating my opinions. If you'd like to read my written review, please check the link in my description. I also did written reviews for Missionary Man, a Dolph Lundgren movie, Rubber, which I just posted, which is about a killer tire. Not as fun as it sounds. And I believe that's it. And then, of course, watch my vlog of The Conjuring as well as my written review, and I did a critiquing the critics of SF Debris, so check that out when you get the chance too. Would I recommend you see this? If you want to, go ahead. If you're on the fence, just wait till it comes out on DVD. So that's all I've got. I'll see you guys later.